Welcome to another episode of Elementality, everybody. Super excited to be here on a hot 100-plus degree day. We are down in the studios, nice and cool, with the AC. I get to have one of my favorite conversations of the month with the man, the myth, the legend, Carl Richards. Carl, welcome back.
Reese, thank you. Super excited.
It's nice to have a co-host that can make my brain spin and also give me therapeutic financial advice during the episode.
It's my job.
Yeah. Carl is the monk of the mountains, the mountain goat. He's been known as St. Carl. He's got a lot of different nicknames out there. He's a therapeutic counselor. He makes sure and listens really well. I just really enjoy our chats. And despite the fact that we get together only once a month for recording these episodes, and we try to get quite a few in, we've been having fun kind of getting together and talking more about all of these issues outside this studio setting too. It's just been fun to have more time together. So thanks, man, for all the time you've been putting in the last few months.
Yeah, super rewarding. Excited about it.
Yeah, and people ask me, they're like, why is Carl doing this stuff? Like, why? You must be paying him millions and millions of dollars to do this. And I assure them, yes, Carl's getting paid, but you'd be surprised how much of a labor of love this really is. I thought I'd give you a chance to kind of explain to people like what the ethos of this project have become for you too.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I just think of money as a vehicle for meaning. Mm-hmm. And I think it's central in how we live our lives, and that's what I'm most interested in, is how humans live their lives. Like money is just a righteous trick for me. Mm-hmm. It's just an entry into how can we be better humans.
Yeah.
And so the level at which you think about that same challenge has been fascinating to me, and the ability to be thinking really deeply about tools that will allow us to do that at scale is also very interesting to me. So
yeah.
that's why I'm excited about it. I mean, this is a problem I've been thinking about for more than 2 decades.
Yeah.
Like how do we fix is not the word I'm looking for, but how do we get better at this relationship with money? Because from its very beginning, it's a fraught relationship, right?
And you get some Topo Chicos out of it.
Yeah,
too.
well, and on the lighter side, there's always Topo Chico. For sure.
Chilled in the fridge next door.
For sure.
So let's talk about that today. We're going to kind of have a focused series of the next 4 episodes that are sort of around the main this episode today we're going to record is around the main problem that we kind of see. And then we're going to have some solution episodes that follow here. It'll be a little mini series for the next 3 to 4 episodes. I'll let you kind of define the problem as you see it, and then I'll follow and see if I can have anything to add to that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it might be a couple of little stories. So years ago, as I was traveling all over the world, giving talks, generally for financial advice, financial advisor, financial planner audiences, but often also for clients. Mm-hmm. So a financial advisor would put together a group of clients that would go talk. I sort of got in this habit of asking people, if you could describe your relationship with money in one word, what word would you use? So I took a relatively unscientific poll, but it was all over the world, South Africa and Australia and New Zealand and all over Europe, all over Canada, the United States. And the word that people almost universally used, and it didn't matter where we were, was anxious or anxiety. And sometimes fearful, but pretty close to the same word, right? So if our relationship, if you're going to describe your relationship with money as anxious, and it's something that we use every day, multiple times a day, we have to decide, like that to me is the problem, is we don't know how to interact with money. We've never been taught how to interact with money. If we've been taught anything, we've been taught it's a spreadsheet and calculator problem. which you don't use the word anxious to describe a spreadsheet and calculator problem.
No.
You don't use fear. You don't use greed. You don't use like I'm losing sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So it started to occur to me that money really was like an electric fence that you didn't know was electric, right? Like every time you go to touch it, you think you're approaching a calculator and you're suddenly in a fight, right? Or you're feeling like unmoored. And the other thing that has been super interesting to me lately, like even more interesting lately, is I'm having conversations with people with way more money than they ever need. I'm starting to keep track, actually, like over 100 million, right, in sort of net worth. And those people are saying the same thing, like anxious. That's wild.
It's really fascinating.
So it appears to me that this system, and I'm not talking about capitalism per se, I'm just saying the system that we've built around money all over the world has to be broken if even the people who have won, quote unquote, won the game are miserable, and the people who have, quote unquote, lost the game or are losing the game are miserable. Like even the people who have won are miserable. And I put won in air quotes, huge air quotes. So the problem to me feels like we're not addressing the root cause. We're throwing more and more fancier spreadsheets, Monte Carlo analysis. We're going, one decimal place on the Monte Carlo didn't work, let's go 3. Like we're increasingly trying to make it a physics problem. We've got physics envy. We're trying to solve it, and we're not addressing the root of the issue, which is our fundamental relationship with this thing we call money, and our sense of security, our sense of certainty.
Yeah,
that to me is the huge problem.
So what I'm hearing, and I'm just going to kind of restate back. What I'm hearing is, at the root of this problem lives anxiety, fear, worry, people being unsettled, and implied in that is the solution that we've been providing is to try to convince them that they don't need to worry.
Right. The solution,
Certainty.
We've become sellers of certainty.
Certainty is our solution,
Yeah.
right? Like, well, I'll prove to you that you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
With
Yep.
more math.
And more decimal places.
And so any psychologist will tell you that that's a dangerous place to go. When a patient says, if a patient comes in with some bias, right, saying this is the way the world is, and they've got one story to tell, right?
Yep.
My marriage is broken because of this story. My career is broken because of this story. Most therapists, the goal of, and I'm not a therapist, okay,
Right.
but I've tried. I almost wish that was a second career.
Right.
I probably will go into that if I was ever going to do therapy. I'd
right.
probably want therapy for financial advisors.
Yeah.
But like, I think that the goal of good therapy is to practice telling a variety of stories.
Yeah.
Lots of stories that are possible. There isn't one story.
Yeah.
The story around anxiety might be, that's okay. Like, it's okay to be worried, and that's just going to be part of life, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Or it might be you could name 10. You could tell 10 different stories about your life, that it was successful, that it was bad, that you picked the wrong career, that you didn't have enough money, that you had too much money, that it was the divorce, it was the lack of the divorce, it was you made the wrong career decision too early. There's just hundreds of stories we can tell ourselves, and the truth is to get settled about your situation. That, in my experience at least, is to realize that there isn't one story that's the right one. There's just accepting your unique, beautiful path.
Yeah.
Each day, each choice, all that you learned from it, just really enjoying this experience that you've had, because it truly is a beautiful thing if you allow yourself to tell yourself those stories.
Yeah.
The stories of acceptance, the stories of this beautiful life that you've had, all these experiences.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be either bad or good. Doesn't have to be elated, like euphoric, great, I've had the best life, better than anybody. And it doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, I'm just a mess, you know? but it's somewhere living with that like lack of certainty, living with the uncertain. That feels like the only way to overcome what the American Psychology Association says is America's like main problem, like financial stress, financial anxiety, financial worry.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so important to understand this. Like, we think our job as a financial advisor is to provide certainty, and it turns out that by providing that uncertainty, we just continue to perpetuate the myth that it exists, right? That if I just get a better calculator, and if that advisor doesn't give it to me, I'll just find another advisor that will give it to me. It's just a rotating. It's the same thing you see in, like, how many time management books do you need to read before you just figured out, I'll use a 3x5 card and write down the 3 things I've got to get done today, right? Like, it's this continual search for the solution that doesn't exist. And so becoming sellers of certainty, like, we think for some reason our job is to provide certainty, and we have to realize, like, no one cares. No one cares about your solutions. They care about their problems. And once we understand that there's no way to, like, I can't provide a financial plan that's detailed, no amount of reassurance is enough. Because it turns out we live in an uncertain world. And so I think to me, the problem is that we keep throwing, to make it really simplistic, we keep throwing prescriptions at people. You don't like green? That's okay, Mr. and Mrs. Klein. I've got blue.
Yeah.
And we haven't really taken the time to diagnose, and the diagnosis isn't about, oh, your balance sheet doesn't look good or it does look good. The diagnosis is, those are just tricks to get underneath that to help people understand, like, hey, I don't really know what the future is going to look like. It's much more, I'm a guide in a changing landscape, not a defender of an outdated map.
Yeah.
We've spent a lot of time getting really good at drawing maps, and then when the world doesn't turn out to look like the map, we defend it. We say things like, if you miss the 10 best days in the market, we have a list of ways to defend the map. Well, it turns out, try drawing a map where the landscape is literally changing. People's lives, the markets, the economy. You can't. So you're going to make an effort to draw the best map you can.
Yeah.
But then we need to accept the fact that we live in an uncertain world, and that lives change and people change and markets change and inflation is different than you thought, right? So to me, that's the problem, is that we're trying to be defenders of maps. We're trying to be the best map drawers ever, great. And we're trying to defend the maps. What we need to realize is the tool set we need to build is more like a guide, a mountain guide in a changing landscape.
The 120 million roughly households in America, and the 90,000 roughly CFPs that we'll use as a proxy for like competency.
Right.
Which I know that's not entirely. There are non-CFPs that are equally competent, and there are CFPs that are equally incompetent. But let's use that as a proxy. Like, we're like, this certainty that we have been selling, I think it's because most of us have a shot with the top quartile of 1% of income. We'll talk about some statistics of who the market's actually serving, who the CFP market's actually serving in a future episode. But the vast majority of Americans, the definition of what certainty is for the top 1% is just like not possible for the vast majority of people. And even for many of that top 1%, it's still not possible. If the certainty that you're selling is you're going to be fine and have plenty of money, if that's the certainty.
Yeah.
And I'm not, that's just one.
I know, but it was really important to unpack that just a little bit, because what's interesting is, even talking, and I've been keeping track of these conversations because I'm super curious about it. Again, I'm just using 100 million as some ridiculous number, right? But it's true. I've had more conversations with people that have more than $100 million net worth that are worried that tomorrow is the day they're going to end up under a bridge.
Yeah.
So
it's
certainty
still not possible.
More money does not solve the certainty problem.
No, but it's kind of crazy that even in that scenario where you'd think that there would be some reduced anxiety around money. I personally, like, my experience has been like anecdotally very similar.
Yeah.
But I think the people that tend to come to the to the St. Carls of the world, right, are the ones that are also like really struggling with that emotional job of confidence, of presence, of they're looking for that therapeutic counselor.
Yeah.
I do think there's some objective like reduction in stress, we'll call it, as people's liquidity rises. But
Sure.
my anecdotal experience has been the same as yours. Like, I don't feel like the conversation with someone with 10,000 is much different than the person with 10 million. They're very similar.
Yeah.
But like, we are the only thing we have been showing people visually is a map of plenty of money is going to make it all better.
Yes.
That's all we're showing. I mean,
Right.
we're not showing anything like in front of our clients, you know, medium income, low income, or very high income.
Yeah.
That's any different. I mean, we're just showing them that our whole orientation here is to make sure that one day you have plenty of money.
Yeah.
I'm a wealth advisor, right? The word wealth is like so loaded and so intimidating.
Right,
Who even
right.
thinks they have wealth? Even the $100 million person would be like, well, I don't have real wealth. I'm not a billionaire.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, no one thinks they have wealth, and
Right.
we're wealth advisors, and we're showing the future. At some point down the road, when you have a lot of money, that's when you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help you get there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the whole orientation is like it's got to be increasing the anxiety.
Yeah.
That there's no wonder I don't know if it's the 90% of the CFPs, but like the vast majority, they are in business to show that that's the place we're trying to go, where you have plenty of money.
Yeah.
And it's
you'll
like,
get there one day.
and we'll get there one day. And so every at bat, like every client meeting, I just happened to meet barely with a 75-year-old couple that I just met with last week. I met with them like 4 months ago, and they saw from this Charles Schwab ad on TV that there was this calculator that showed you if you sell the house here, then it does that, and if you invest your money this way, it might be worth that. And they're like, do you have like some kind of a calculator or a tool that like shows me like exactly when I'm going to run out of money and how it's going to work? And I didn't give them this idea because I was very much in this elements framework of like, I'm not going to put that in front of them because it didn't matter, right? I put that in front of them one time. I put a simulation in front of them to just, respond to their request. Yeah. And it was so interesting because this happened prior to I guess it's been more than 4 months now, because it was like a week or two prior to the market decline. Yeah. Back in the 1st of January. So it was probably like right around the end of the year.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got down to that, even though their model and their simulation, it actually showed a very positive state. They're not exceptionally wealthy, but there's just like no scenario in which they're going to like run out of money.
Yeah.
They left that conversation after getting sold certainty, essentially. I incorrectly, or, I responded to their request of selling some certainty, and I gave them some certainty.
Yeah.
As soon as the market was down 15, 20%, even though they're probably only 30% in equities.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a really heavy burden of, I want to relook at that thing, and I want you to re-show me and make sure I'm okay again, because it couldn't possibly be okay after all that's happened in the last 3 or 4 months. That was their feeling.
Yep.
And it was so interesting because as I went to that meeting, I was like, oh my gosh, I could just do this again and again and again and again. Or I'm going to go back and readdress what I've addressed with them over the last 7-8 years, which is like, you're not going to be able to have that certainty. This couple has a pretty big difference in age. Yeah. More than, I think it's 12 or 13 years age gap. And so the older spouse is feeling like there's just a lot of uncertainty around how much they should spend now. And should we take a vacation now? Should we really enjoy life now? Is it time for us to really can we even keep golfing? Can we keep going on trips together? Mm-hmm. There's just so much underlying anxiety. And so we just addressed the inability that we're going to have to ever really know. Yeah. I just said, I could show you this model again, and you're going to see that it's just fine. Yeah. But I could also show a scenario where, it's not okay.
Yeah,
you know, and it was just like so hard for them to not want me to prove that to them one more time.
Yeah.
But the conversation was a lot more fruitful when they accepted the idea that we're just not going to be able to have 100% certainty. You're going to change your behavior today because of that, you know, reality. And I don't know, it's the first time in a while when I've had to actually address somebody at that stage who's not perfectly wealthy and doesn't have the exact amount they would think they need.
Yeah.
And it's kind of on the edge.
Yeah.
But it's like it didn't matter. They wanted permission to feel okay. In either conversation, it was the same outcome.
Yeah.
And they needed that from me. But the tool that I showed them back before the market, you know, declined caused them to start to index on the tool really heavily, really quickly.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, I probably shouldn't have. Who knows? I mean, it's not a bad experiment, but, you know, I learned some things from that exchange.
Well, I think it's so we know for a fact that as soon as we get to the place where we know we're going to be okay, we will move that goalpost, right? Like that's not nobody listening to this is going to be surprised by the fact that it's never enough. If what you're focused on is having enough, you can never have enough. You can only be there now. You can never arrive at enough. So I think if we circle back to this problem idea, well, this just reminds me of one quick story. I remember I had clients and we'll just call them John and Jill. John and Jill came to me. They had young kids. They were one of my favorite clients. They actually happened to be neighbors, and we were good friends, and their kids were the same age as our kids, and this was young. I think their oldest was 8, and then they had some younger ones too. And John was an ER doctor, and he came to me and said, you know, we think that everybody gets this wrong. This idea that I'm just going to work until for the first, 15 years of my kids' lives so that I can have some time later. And the words he used was like, by the time they're that age, they're going to have nose rings and purple hair. Not that there's anything wrong with nose rings and purple hair. That was just what he said. So, and that was a metaphor for they're going to want nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'd like to take some time off now. Like, I'd like to go on a sabbatical now. And could we take 6 months? I'd like to know, could we take 6 months to work from basically travel and homeschool our kids, visit all our family along the way, do the whole United States tour, come back? And I remember I knew the answer. I knew the answer was like, well, I can certainly paint a picture that says this won't work, but it doesn't seem, I remember saying, like in my head, I remember thinking, it's not stupid. You know what I mean? Like it's not imprudent is probably the word that I would have used with the client. But before I calculated it, I remember saying to them, well, yeah, before I go run the plan, let me ask you a question. Like, if it says that it's not imprudent, would you do it?
Yeah.
And they both looked at each other like, oh no. And they were like, yeah, I think we would. I think we would. So I pretended like, okay, go away. It'll take me a week, right? Like righteous trick. I'll run all the numbers and the calculations. I'll print out 200 pages to tell you, I can't promise you that this is going to work, but it doesn't seem like a dumb idea to me.
Yeah.
And they went, right? And I still have postcards from that event. So all I'm saying is I think if we think about the problem is we are focused on delivering something we can't deliver. Like, we think our job is to deliver products and solutions that provide certainty.
Strategy, like immediate wealth creation, exceptional alpha.
And we're going to get you there, and you're going to arrive someday. And look, all the tools and techniques we use to do those things are important. I'm not downplaying the ability to run those projections and you should be the best calculator in the
even
problem.
Source good product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a critical part. Like, you should be the best map builder on the planet and feel really confident in building a defensible map, whatever that looks like to you. And it doesn't matter unless we can get to this underlying thing. So all of that map building is righteous tricks to help slowly guide people through it.
And I'm just going to put a bow on this conversation I had with this client too, because I was really proud of about a year ago. The one spouse is retiring prematurely in order to spend time with their spouse who's retired at some personal risk to both of them. And that was a really big risk because the younger spouse was what I would consider, like Russ Allen Prince's methodology, an accumulator personality, super conservative, very worried about money, very concerned about every penny. and getting them to just take that leap and move on and just say, guys, like, we'll never know if it's going to be enough, but like, I just think
not stupid.
It's not stupid, right?
Yeah.
And then when they came back after I showed them that model in December, after they came and we just recently met, you know, I asked that same question that you asked to your client, which is like, guys, if I put this in front of you again and I show you that it does put your overall plan at risk, you're going to run out of money at some point in, 10 years plus from now. I mean, I'm showing them their elements and they can look at their years and they're like, they have enough certainty from just that to make some kind of intelligent decision. I said, would you go back to work right now? Like, would you go back to work right now and not go on this vacation that you're about to go on, and spend these like next couple years together? And they're like, no, like, we're going no matter what. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So why are you putting yourself through this torture? Yeah. Like, yeah, be reasonable, like, be frugal, like, try to be thoughtful about this trip. But like, if I were you, this is what you've been working for your entire life. Yeah. Love every minute of it and just enjoy this thing. And, totally. I bought them a cold brew. Right. And then they were off to the races, just happy as could be. Yeah. And it's ultimately like, that was, it was just another illustration for me of like, even if you model the pain, that might be there. Yeah. Your client will determine through their own internal values, like what important choice they're going to make next. And
super important.
It's really beautiful to see people take the permission to sort of live the life that they want to live. Yeah. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do within some level of prudence.
No, I think that like just
that prudence does have some. There is some
I agree. Like,
prudence.
Look, I still feel like I can go toe to toe with anybody with my 17B. Right? Like, I know how to use a car. Is it 17B? 12B?
Well, you got your 10B.
I'm not reverse
12C.
I'm not reverse Polish. I'm the normal. I think it's 17B. Yeah. I still feel like I can go toe to toe with anybody. Like, that stuff's important. And what people really want is, after all the calculations, after all, like, I want to be able to look you in the eyes and say, look, based on everything I know about you, right? And then I can grant you permission to go do the thing. Right. And to me, that's the most beautiful part of this job.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the most beautiful part of this job.
All right, Carl. Great episode. Thanks so much, man. Look forward to doing it again.
Amen, Reese.